The ground begins with a whisper you could mistake for a truck 2 streets over. Then it takes a breath. In the dark just before dawn, Mexico City inhales, holds it a heartbeat too long, and beds in 1,000 apartments shift a handspan to the left. A glass sings, walls tick. People glance at the clock, 7:17 a.m., Thursday, September 19th, 1985. And in the second between noticing and knowing, a city is still intact. The next second breaks it. A growl rises from the subsoil, low and carnivorous, as if the ancient lake beneath the Capitol were waking. Lamps sway, closet doors clap. Then the world lunges sideways and never comes back to level. The floor rolls like a slow ocean, the ceiling hisses dust. Tiles leap, cupboards fly open, elevators shudder and stop, and everyone who can stand runs for a doorway because their body insists on moving toward a frame. Out in the streets, the air is already chalked with plaster. Power lines whip, buses fishtail as drivers wrestle wheels that briefly mean nothing. The first buildings begin to move in ways buildings should not. Columns popping like knuckles, windows bursting in glittering exhalations. Somewhere in Colonia Roma, a dentist reaches for the light switch and finds daylight instead where a wall had been. At Televisa, cameras catch their own ceiling collapsing. A long wave travels east through the soft clay of the dead lake bed and makes towers miles apart sway in the same slow arc. You can hear the city if you listen past the roar, a million small prayers, drawers emptying, the hollow percussion of rebar giving up. You can smell it too, wet earth dragged up from the buried lake, ozone from snapped cables, perfume from shattered bottles. On the 9th floor, a neighbor shouts a name. On the ground floor, a man ties a child's shoe as the lobby shifts like a barge. It lasts long enough to become its own weather. 50, 60 seconds of motion, then a long, cruel tale in which structures decide whether they will sit down or keep standing. Some do it with an exhausted sigh, floors pancaking into a trunk of rubble. Others stagger and live, stairwells cracked like dry riverbeds. In old barrios, mortar shakes free. In new zones, soft stories fold like paper dolls. A hospital drops to the height of a bus. An office tower leans into its neighbor as if to share a secret, and the secret is weight. Silence after an earthquake is alarms and distant horns and someone shouting, "A la calle!" It is the thin song of sprinklers and the new hush under the dust where voices used to be. The city blinks. A maternity ward tips and slides babies toward a light of grit. Nurses curl around them with their bodies because that is what their hands have left. Then the people come. They come without being told, because nothing is more eloquent than a cloud of powder above a street you know. Men rip shirts into flags and wave down cars to make lanes. Women take corners and write names on paper sacks. The first rescuers wear pajamas and yesterday's uniforms. They bring shovels and buckets, yes, but mostly they bring their backs and fingers. Someone finds a corridor still whole and turns it into a place for one voice to carry orders. A web forms, digger, hauler, runner, nurse, spun out of strangers. We call them brigadistas because a word that used to belong to unions now belongs to anyone with a heartbeat and a reason. They organize themselves faster than instructions can travel. A boy hoists a sign, silencio, and a street stills. From a seam, a fingertip of sound rises. 3 taps. A line forms. People on their knees, passers at their shoulders, runners to the truck. Stones move hand to hand like buckets of river water. When arms fail, there are more arms. When hands bleed, there is tape. When someone is pulled out alive, the cheer climbs. Elsewhere, the city tries to remember its own size. Radios bark in 3 languages. Doctors walk toward ruins that used to be hospitals, stethoscopes already around their necks. Police pull tape across streets that have stopped being streets and become open wounds, and the tape is ignored in the kindest possible way. In a plaza missing two sides, a man climbs onto a crashed bus and directs traffic with a shard of mirror. Helicopters arrive like dragonflies, peering into courtyards that are suddenly outside. They make lists that are too short. The television says a number and quickly looks away. People ignore the number and count like bodies do. Fingers, then names, then prayers. Night brings its own weather. Power is out. Candles bloom in windows with no frames. The smell changes, sweet and unbearable, and rescuers work faster because smells are clocks that do not lie. In the parks, tents rise after rain. Doctors' tents, soup tents, rumor tents. A guitarist holds a chord with knuckles turned to stone. Someone drops a blanket from a balcony of rebar and says, "Keep it." Between aftershocks, the city argues with itself and then forgives the argument. A banker reads a list of open pharmacies. A punk with safety pins brings coffee and is called brother. In the cathedral, a crack runs from altar to roof like a pale vine. A woman touches it and decides it can stay until the funerals are done. Bulldozers idle at the crowd's edge and are told to wait, because there is tapping, because there is a voice under here singing a child's song to stay brave. Days braid into one another. Streets earn nicknames from what was found there. The woman with red shoes, the typewriters that looked like turtles, the child who sang. Rescue dogs arrive with flags. A boy with a slingshot becomes the fastest messenger. In the Zona Rosa, a hotel folds into itself like a suitcase, and reporters try not to look at each other when a cheer rises. Another living name. Not everything is saved. Office towers become shoe boxes of air, each box a story stopped mid-sentence. A row of tenements sits down in a line like men on a curb. An old woman is pulled from between the first and second floors, with a caged canary still breathing in her lap. She says nothing for a day and then asks whether anyone watered the geraniums on a balcony that is no longer there. Nearby, a young doctor covers a shape and goes back to the line. We learn a city by how it breaks and how it fixes itself. Engineers kneel in the streets with clipboards. Anytime a wall leans, an argument blooms. The old houses on firm ground shrug and live. The modern towers on the wet clay of the old lake fail like promises, made in good faith and bad math. On folding chairs, words like resonance and amplification enter everyday language. Never again, someone writes, and a code takes shape from grief. On the 9th day, a woman walks from a tent city to her building and finds it is gone. She picks up a tile she recognizes by its hairline crack, the way you recognize a freckle on a lover's shoulder, and puts it in her pocket without knowing why. On the 12th day, a man finds a photograph under a traffic cone 2 miles from home and rinses it in a fountain. Faces come up slowly. He frames it later with salvaged molding and hangs it by a door that sticks in summer. Months make the city careful and then impatient. Scaffolds rise. New codes are written in sentences that read like spells. Memorials sprout where people leave shoes and candles and bits of ribbon. Pigeons learn to step around the shrines. Every September, the air comes cooler, and people glance at the clock at 7:17 because it is theirs. And yet the road to ruins is also the road back. It is swept each dawn. It is lined with jacarandas that insist on purple. It is walked by nurses whose hands remember, by engineers with pencils behind their ears, by the boy with the slingshot who now carries invoices in a messenger bag. It runs past a hospital rebuilt on deeper footings, past a school with a yard for drills, past a plaza where the guitarist now takes requests. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.